One. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Welsh Republic Podcast, episode 101. And I am here with my guest today, Kimberly Coulter. She's the niece of the famous Anne Coulter. How are you doing today, Kimberly?
Well, I'm living. I'm serving you mom of two, just up in the morning realness, and I'm ready with my knockoff German ripoff Red Bull, and I'm ready to answer some good questions.
What is it like that, compared to Red Bull? Would you say it's better, has more energy than Red Bull, or?
It has less of the gross chemicals in it. Aldi's is a German brand grocery store that we have here, and they just have better health standards. So I'm not here to tell you that energy drinks are good for you, but if you're gonna drink an energy drink, it costs about a third of the price, and it's not as terrible. It's still pretty terrible, but it's not as terrible.
Well, I mean, especially if you're a mother, I can imagine you're going to need all that energy, man, to get up, look after the kids. It's not an easy job being a mother and a father.
Right. And I need my energy to be able to actually make my coffee. So I need to I just pop the can open, and then I have the energy to go, grind the beans and pour the coffee.
So, how was your sleep, Kim? Did you sleep all right? Or you look like, I know you've just woken up, but did you have a good sleep?
And that was a very polite way of asking why I look so tired. Yeah, I actually slept great. I woke up and we messaged each other, and I realized that I had blown you off because I'm the worst, and I wanted to make sure I got this done. So I was like, you know what? Just hop on. If people want to make fun of you for how you look, that is your karma payback. And that's
Oh,
just
don't
okay.
worry. Don't worry about it, Kim. I've been having a bit of stupid drama lately with some of these people called, Divinities fans. They're like, I was on a stream defending Fair and Balanced because she was getting bullied by these stupid people, and it's one of them mocked my autism, and I've been getting weird comments from them lately. It's just silly, but yeah, it doesn't care. I mean, I don't care. I mean, they're just bullies, and I think the way they've been treating her is not very good. But yeah, it is what it is.
Yeah, you gotta let it go. Like, people are gonna have stuff to say about you no matter what you do, no matter how you are. Like, there's always somebody that's gonna talk crap or talk poorly, and um you gotta decide that, like, you don't care, even though it's hard to do that. I understand. I'm like, of all people, I'm like a very feeling person. Like, I've been known to be a little bit on the sensitive side. um I'm a woman. It's just a thing. And I know people have a problem with admitting that, but we are just the more feeling and sensitive people, and I just you gotta roll with the punches.
Kimberly, are you sure? Are you sure? Are you sure it's not the patriarchy's problem?
Oh my God, I'd be a
Yeah.
mess without the patriarchy. Like, God bless the patriarchy. Yeah. And keep my
So
womanly self in order.
the whip. Oh, that's funny. So, Kimberly, tell me about yourself. So, obviously, everybody knows you as the, famous, niece, the niece of the famous Anne Coulter.
Yeah.
So, tell me about like your political background, because I remember you and me have been speaking for a while. We've been friends for a little while now,
Yeah.
and tell me about your political. Like, I've watched some of your interviews before. You used to say that you used to be a liberal, and that you moved on to conservatism. And tell me like your whole political journey and
Right.
the whole very beginning of it, and like that struggle when you went through when you were younger, and what led you to the road of where you are now, and how did you manage to get to the person where you are now, and to overcome the challenges where to get to where you are now.
Well, that's quite the journey. So let's begin. As you pointed out, I belong to a very politically turbulent family, and started gaining notoriety when I was very young. I actually shared a tweet the other day sharing a little anecdote. When I was very little and Anne started going on TV, my dad would tell me, "Oh, Kimberly, your aunt Anne was on TV again last night, and she told everyone you were being very nugatory." And I would scream and go, "No, she didn't! No, she didn't!" So
What
anyway,
does nubatory mean?
you know, I'm going to, I was not going to admit this out loud, but whatever, I'm going to admit it here, that I didn't know that nugatory was actually a real word until like embarrassingly late in life. It's like hey. Sorry, I got a cough.
No
just
worries, take your
out.
time. Even the doggies will agree with that.
Even the dogs are like, don't call my mommy nugatory. Nugatory. I said Sorry, this is gonna be a really funny live stream. I can already tell.
No worries, Kim. It's all good.
I'm just gonna mute the mic for 2 seconds.
No worries. So yeah, ladies and gentlemen, she's just taking her time with the dogs. It should be all good.
I'm also double checking the actual definition of nugatory. Okay, so yeah, it means that it's like of little or no value or not important.
Fair enough. So yeah, Kim,
so basically my dad would tell me like, your aunt is going on TV and telling everyone you don't matter, and I'd be like, no. So anyway, that anecdote over. I actually grew up like moderately conservative. I remember having like very conservative viewpoints as a younger kid. And then by the time I left my Catholic school, I was in Catholic school until about 4th or 5th grade. And by the time I left Catholic school and I went to a predominantly Jewish school. And suddenly everybody around me hated Anne. Suddenly everyone around me was like, oh my gosh, you're Kimberly Coulter, not like Anne Coulter, I hope. And I'm like, what do you mean? She's the coolest person ever. And people, that was like my introduction to liberal indoctrination, right? Like,
what year was this?
Oh gosh, you're calling out my major gaps in history here. Late 90s, early 2000s.
I see. Fair enough. So, as you were saying, keep going about your backstory.
So people started telling me like, oh, well, you couldn't possibly agree with Anne because Anne is a horrible person and she doesn't like the gays and she doesn't like minorities and she doesn't like immigrants. And I just thought to myself like, well, I'm not a bad person, you know, like, and it became like almost a reflex. People would be like, you know, are you related to Ann Coulter? And my immediate reaction would be, I'm adopted. Like, don't shoot, I'm adopted. And that got me through a little while. And I was kind of a degenerate, in my like, teenage years to early adulthood. I was a bit wild. I was like a super senior. I graduated late. So like, that tells you what liberalism does for you. I was like all about like doing whatever I wanted. It was a bad time. I kind of just believed like, oh, well, like an abortion and all sorts of other negative, terrible things for women. And I had this idea that, I knew how the world was in. A lot of young people have that idea, right? Like, I get it. I know everything. And then, I moved to California and I started doing the cannabis industry stuff. And I was just so depressed. I was depressed and in awful relationships and like not really living up to my potential at all. And my political viewpoints were starting to, like, I wasn't very political until I moved, and then I was like, oh yeah, like, I'm gonna go to the slut walk, and RuPaul is amazing, I love drag, and sex work is real work, and I was so miserable. I was the most miserable I've ever been in my entire life, and like I said, I was in terrible relationships, and I had no real good friends, or very few real good friends, and it all came to a boiling point. I was living with this gay kid, and he almost burned our house down coming home trashed one night. Almost burned our house down. Like, literally, like, I don't know if you know what dabbing is.
You mean the
No, not that
Oh,
dabbing. Like smoking weed dabbing.
oh, I see. Fair enough. Fair enough. Yeah,
So it's like
I
smoking concentrate. So like he had a propane tank, which sounds insane because it's like, who uses a propane tank to smoke weed? But like when you're a stoner like in California, you're up on all the trends or whatever. And dabbing was really big. It had just become a really big thing. And he had a whole propane tank for his dabbing stuff. And um, he came home late one night after having been at God knows where, doing God knows what, and we had a heating vent on the floor, and he threw like cardboard on top of it, and this was like only a few feet away from his dabbing station, and I woke up to the smell of smoke, and I ran down, and it's really funny, we had video cameras all over the house because we were in kind of a bad area, so we wanted to have security. And like you could see me running out of my room down the stairs into the first floor area, finding the box, bringing the like almost on fire box into his room and being like, "Do you see this? You could have killed us." So at that point I was like, I can't stay here. Like this was a wake up call. Like I'm gonna die. He's gonna blow up my house, and I'm gonna be either dead or incredibly bad off. And I had actually been hanging out with Anne quite a bit because living in LA, she was in LA a lot at the time. So I was in California. I would come to LA to meet her, and we would go to like all these events. And then she brought me to see her on this show called Problematic. And I don't know if you know Problematic. It was canceled right after this episode, actually, with Moishi something. It's a very Jewish name. I'm sorry, I don't remember. It's Moishi something or other. He's famous for a lot of things, but he did an episode of his show Problematic on the alt-right, and it was Jim Norton, Ann Coulter, and Lucian Wintrich, who at the time was the youngest openly gay White House correspondent, or actually the first openly gay White House correspondent in American history. Little fun fact: he's a good friend. So I met him, and we all went out to hang out after, and I was still very liberal at the time, but I was open to the idea of like spending time with Anne, and I was meeting all these fun people and learning new things, and I was like, okay, like these, like, because at the time it was very much like, F a Nazi, punch him in the face, these guys are all bigots, whatever,
Was
and I'm
this
meeting,
around like 2014, 2015?
yeah,
Or
I would say that at this point we're up to 2014, 2015. And
yeah.
all these people were Nazis, and everybody was a bigot, and like I started, like I said, I was hanging out with Anne more and meeting some of her friends, and I'm realizing like, well, I've always known deep down that Anne was not a horrible person, no matter what people said, even though it was kind of jarring to me. And I'm meeting all these people who everyone's saying is like, baby Hitlers, and they're sweet as can be, and very accepting of me. Maybe I can be this like olive branch between the parties. Go figure. I think I can reinvent the wheel. And obviously that didn't work. A lot of like, as soon as I started, like, Lucian pretty much took me under his wing and was like, we're gonna be besties. Like, you're gonna come hang out with me in Washington D.C. and meet some of these horrible people, and we're gonna have a great time. And I'm gonna just like talk to you about politics. And the more we would like get into it, the more I realized that like fundamentally, when you break down my beliefs, I was fairly conservative. Like when it came down to it, like I was very much for individual rights. I was very much for the Second Amendment. I was very much against open borders. Just a lot of things. And I started to, like I said, I wanted to kind of bridge the divide. So I was bringing a lot of these talking points into my very liberal circles, which immediately got me, screw you, Nazi, you're just like Anne. You're just like Anne. I knew it. I knew it all this time. And it's like, well, like, and some of these people are people I've been friends with for over a decade, mind you. They think that suddenly I woke up and I was like, Hitler is a great guy, and he had some good points. And, like minorities, like, F the minorities, man. They're just, a burden. I hate all minorities across the board. And, you know, like, the gays should burn in hell. And all of this is going to be hilarious, clippable material, by the way. But, like, these are people that I know my whole life. And it was one of those, you know, I had just met all of these conservative people who, by all recounts, would be awful, would be so mean to me. And they were so nice to me, even though at the time I was very much like, no, I'm a liberal. I'm very openly on the left. And they were like, that's nice. That's fine. If you want to talk about it, we'll talk about it. But if you don't, I don't care.
Sorry,
And
Kim, what were you meaning about the Hitler bit? Sorry, say that again.
like, they think that people were under the impression that because I was starting to say some right-wing talking points, and because I was starting to try to like have right-wing leaning conversations or favoring right-wing conversations, that like suddenly I was like part of Hitler's youth. You know what I mean? Like suddenly, like, I
So
woke up.
basically, they were saying that you think that Hitler was a good guy, that you hate minorities and all that. So that's
And
what
I
they
hate
thought the left
gays,
were.
and I hate, you know, whatever.
I see what you're
Sexist,
saying.
racist, homophobic, whatever is phobe word you want to throw at me. They were like, oh, so obviously you're all of this stuff.
Mhm.
And it's like, well, and it was really disheartening because it was like, okay, these are people who I'd like, if you had asked me only a little while ago, I would have said, these are my best friends. They get me more than anybody. And suddenly, like, I'm like, you know, maybe an open border is not a great idea. And they're like, bigot. It's like, can't we just have a conversation about it? We could ultimately disagree, but like, the mere fact, and like, actually, I was speaking to an old friend the other day, and she was telling me that when I first started getting, I dove way too deep into it at first. I'm not gonna lie about that. In the beginning, I was like, I'm gonna drop red pill bombs on all the libtards. Ah! And I went a little far, but like, there was a friend of mine, I'm not gonna name names, but there was one of my guy friends hit up my best lady friend and was like, did you see what Kim has been posting on social media? And I think that she believes in white replacement. What are we gonna do? And my friend very, very appropriately was like, I'm not her handler. I don't know what the hell. But like I said, like, that was very common, and like I sort of want to be a fly on the wall to hear some of these conversations, because like, even the people who held out a little longer, ultimately the conversation always divulged or would like disintegrate into them being like, well, you're basically a Nazi, right? And I'm just like, well, what are you talking about? Like, no, I'm not a German
Kim,
socialist from the 1930s. Like,
Kim, what would you say, like when you were like changing from a liberal to a conservative? What was the one argument, like the one subject out of any of it, that really changed your mind and really convinced you to move you to conservatism?
I wouldn't say it was any one talking point, but what I would say is that it was my liberal friend's reaction to me saying anything conservative that made me want to look it up more. Because when you're trying to have a conversation with somebody and they're like, you can't talk about that, that like, that was a little red flag. It was like, okay, why is this information so dangerous to you that you don't even want to talk about it? Like, you will throw away a 10-year plus friendship because now I'm starting to look into this stuff. And that, you know, like, I'd bring up like about the, like, you know, we're bringing up Hitler a lot, but like the anti-Semitism thing, like a lot of like Jewish friends of mine were like, oh, so like, you must believe in all this now. Like, what do you? I've never given any sort of inclination of that. And I hate white people who are like, I had hella black friends, but like, you know, I grew up in Manhattan. I had black friends. Like, it wasn't like suddenly I was like, you know, I was just pretending. I didn't like them. Like, these were, you know, people were saying to me, like, if you have any sort of political leanings towards the right wing, suddenly you're all of these negative things. And in my brain, it was just like, well, no, that's not true. Like, and then I started looking into Donald Trump, because like all of the libtards, I had believed a lot of the extreme lies about things that Donald Trump had said and done. And so I started actually looking into his speeches and listening to him talk.
What would you say was like the one speech from him that really made you a Trump fan before?
That is a really good question. I think it was his inaugural speech, honestly. They took it down off of the White House website, by the way, which is a whole other thing. But I actually could hear in what he was saying that he at least cared enough to run. You know what I mean? Like, people have this like weird notion that like people that like somebody would like really want to be president. I don't think anybody who even runs necessarily wants it per se. I think that like there's a lot of trepidation that comes with running America. You know what I mean? At least in face. And I think that I saw in Donald Trump, what a lot of other people saw in Donald Trump, was that he wasn't a typical politician. He wasn't a standard politician. And that was like, okay, like he might be kind of an idiot. He might be a little retarded, whatever. I'm willing to overlook these things. I didn't vote for him the first time around. I voted for Hillary Clinton. Let's just like be perfectly clear about that. Like I mailed.
Have you admitted to
ballot.
people that you voted for Hillary Clinton? Have you admitted to people before?
Yes.
Oh, fair enough.
I'm very open about my past because, especially like I see one of the things that like, especially even people on the right, like, when I exposed like a pedophile on the right before, and a lot of right wingers were like, oh well, look at her, she's an undercover liberal. And the reason I'm so open about having been a liberal is to counteract those accusations. You know what I mean? So when people are like, oh, well, like, you're just doing it to be this, it's like, no, like, I'm very open. I know what my life used to look like. And, like, it was the most miserable I'd ever been in my life. And I'm not proud of those decisions. And would I like to stick them in a drawer and pretend that never happened? Absolutely. I don't know anybody who wouldn't want to do that with any embarrassing part of their past. But the fact of the matter is I embrace it so that, like, people cannot use that as weapons against me because I've already pulled all those weapons. You know what I mean? Like, it's not gonna, like, oh, like, you used to look like a trashy woman. Like, yeah, I know. I get it. Like, I've moved past that. Like, the person that I am today and the person that I was then would not get along at all. There would probably be physical violence. I'm not gonna lie. And I'm not even like a physically violent person, but I would fight myself.
So, Kimberly, you just mentioned a story about where you exposed a conservative as a pedophile. Tell me about this story.
Yeah, I just I want to be careful as far as legality is concerned.
Oh, no worries, no worries. We'll change the subject. We'll change the subject then.
No, I could talk about it. I don't mind talking about it. I just have to be very careful about my language. Yeah, there was a situation where and people who know about this situation already know all the ins and outs. So I'm not gonna use names or anything like that. But it's one of those, like, if you know, you know. I had uncovered some physical evidence that a higher up in a very well-known group of right wingers was attracted to minors and talking about like all kinds of weird perverted shit having to do with his kids. And I exposed that, and I was told all over the place, like, if you're lying, we're gonna firebomb your career. And let's just say, like, those people aren't doing so well right now anyway. But it was a lot. Like, I was getting a lot of hate, and but there was also, like I said, like, there was evidence in my corner. So when people would hear the evidence, I got a lot of support. And ultimately, this person was reported. And I'm not even going to lie, I don't know how it ended up. I don't know if there were charges brought. Because once you hand over information to the FBI, it's kind of out of your control. And this is one of the, like, I handed the information to somebody who is an obligated reporter. And that person brought over that information. And I believe it was to the FBI. And like I said, I don't know if anything came from it. And it was a really, and like, even like I said, talking about it now, like almost gives me like anxiety, because it's like, until you're in a situation like that, you don't understand how hard it is, because you would think it's like, oh, obviously you catch somebody doing some sketchy shit, like go out and tell the world. It's not so simple, because it's a very serious accusation. It carries very serious heat with it, and it's also, and on the other end of it, it's like especially when it's somebody that I didn't know this person like extremely well, but it was somebody that I had thought was a good person and thought was a nice person and thought that I could be friends with. And it's really hard to like come to terms with the fact that like somebody that this person could have slipped right under your nose, under your radar. You know what I mean? And like the I understand why people don't report. It's very stressful. It's like I said, you bring a lot of negative attention onto yourself. People who don't want to believe it will vehemently try to like defend these people, and I can understand why people would be like, it's not worth it, but I couldn't, stay silent about it. And I know that like me not mentioning names or anything now, people could say, oh, well, you're covering for it now and da 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 da. No, like I know I handed it over to the channels I needed to hand it to. I'm not going to further implicate myself in anything. But what I will acknowledge, because it is like people know about this. This isn't like this is, lesser people know about this, but it is something that happened, and like I'm not afraid. I to the extent that I will get the information out there, I'm not afraid to expose people, no matter what side of the political aisle they're on, if they're doing something bad. And that,
so
yeah, I'm ranting a little.
No worries. It's a good job you're doing that, Kim. It's a good job you're exposing that person. So, Kim, tell me about the job that you work for, like the National File job. So you're the digital creator. Like, what is it like to work for them? And like, what would you say makes them more better than other conservative media outlets? And like, what things have you learned from them? Like, words of advice have you learned when it comes to covering conservative media? And what thing do you like that they do better than other conservative media outlets do?
So that actually is a big part of like my political rise to conservatism. I had been fired for defending Alex Jones, and through being friends with Laura Loomer, I was introduced to the people who would ultimately create the National File. And I was like a baby, like, I went to art college, and like I was not trying to be a journalist. I didn't have any idea that this was going to be where I ended up in life. And basically, I started with National File in 2019. I briefly was looking at working with another group, and they just started National File, so I came over and I was one of the first journalists on the group, and they basically taught me how to be a journalist. They taught me about news copy. They taught me how to do research. They taught me to acquire sources and acquire contacts, and basically how to be a professional. And I owe them so much. And what I will say, that does make me sound incredibly biased, but the fact of the matter is, in the 3+ years that I've been with National File, they've never said, oh, we can't tell that story. Like, we can't go there. I've never been told, like, oh, you're not allowed to talk about that. Like, and especially on the back end of all this drama you see with like Daily Wire, you know what I mean? Like, I've never had that problem at National File. I've never had.
Yeah, what is like your opinion towards like the Daily Wire drama with Steven Crowder and like, Jeremy and Ben Shapiro, and also not just that, but other conservative outlets like the Blaze TV and Rebel News? Like, Kimberly, we seem to hear so much drama that goes on in these industries, whether it's sexual harassment, of course, with Sydney Watson and etc., Elijah Schaefer, whether it's just people not getting along. What is your opinion towards Stephen Crowder versus the Daily Wire and the other drama that has been going on lately in the conservative media outlets?
Oh my God, there's so much. I'll start with just the Stephen Crowder Daily Wire thing, and let me just start by saying, like, I was in Mug Club. I never got my mug, Stephen Crowder, so I'm a little salty about that. But
why did you not get your mug?
Oh, I don't. Probably just they just never sent it. I don't know. I don't know why I didn't get my mug.
Weird.
But Stephen Crowder, you owe me a mug. Either way, I was just being funny there. But I don't have any but one single person in politics that I fully agree with or disagree with. I really don't like Ben Shapiro. I think he's kind of a scummy person, and if the contracts that he offered, I guess it's not him personally, but like the contract that his company is offering people looks like that across the board. If that's the case, and that's one of the scummiest things I've ever seen. I don't know how closely you read the contract or if you've how much of the video stuff you watched, but I watched a little bit of both sides of the argument. But ultimately that contract is a scam, 100% a scam, and it is meant to not actually pay out very much. And even the other day I forget what the context of what he shared was, but it was something where I retweeted it and it was like, if you're against all of these practices, then why are your contracts, like, if you understand that people that work with you get banned all the time, why would you put in your contract that they get fined, like, and penalized for this, like, when it's an inevitability? You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, like,
yeah.
I think that without necessarily, I'm not like a fence sitter. Like, I'm not saying I'm more on Stephen Crowder's side in this than I'm not on Ben Shapiro's side of this argument at all. But I'm not like throwing my hat really behind either of them. I did really like Stephen Crowder's video. He was talking about how, like, he was going to figure out how to make a server space and host people who were in shitty contracts like that. And I think that that's really cool. And I hope that he actually does that, because I think that that's a total necessity.
And just to let you know, Kimberly, he signed a contract with Rumble. Did you see that?
I did see that. So, like, I'm very hopeful about that. And I'm cheering that on, because there's obviously, like, if they're offering a contract like that to Stephen Crowder, like, can you imagine how many people who are, like, just barely getting by, who, like, would want an opportunity to work with something as established as Daily Mail, they might be willing to sign a contract like that. And it's probably for significantly less money too, off the bat. So, like, these people, like, they want to make a voice for themselves. They want to be involved. They want to do this work. And unfortunately, that means people get taken advantage of. And I really hope that Crowder sticks to, if he does decide to go down that route. Even if he doesn't, that's fine. I understand that. But if he does go down that route, I hope he sticks to that modus operandi of being fair. Because you don't need to pay a lot. You don't need to pay a ton, but you have to understand that, like, putting people in under all these clauses where they can, like, where, you're basically saying to the left, like, you can't cancel these people. And that was one of the big points that Crowder made that, like, I 100% agree with. Like, what you're telling them is, like, all right, Antifa, like, all you have to do is make one protest about whoever, about, let's just say, Stephen Crowder, and he won't get his paycheck. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. So, like, you're giving them more ammunition by doing stuff like that. And you're also saying the quiet thing out loud, which is that conservative Inc. is controlled opposition. Mm-hmm. It's basically saying, true. Like, you have a script, stick to it, and shut the F up about anything else. You know what I mean? Like,
so, yeah. Kimberly, talking about that, what was the other media companies that you worked for before you worked for the National File?
I briefly worked for this group called Coulter. It was Coulter with 3 T's, CULTTTURE. I was running, I wasn't even doing anything political. I was running a mental health podcast. And That was a lot of fun. I actually, like, one of my big interviews I did like a couple hours with Laura Loomer, and that's how that's one. I mean, we had already been connected. My friend Lucian had already introduced us, but that was like one of the longer interviews that I did, and we kind of talked about like her getting canceled and the mental implications behind that, and like
Yeah, which was absolutely ridiculous. No one should be cancelled. No one should be absolutely cancelled for anything. It's just outrageous.
Well, like, do you want to make hate covert? Because like that's what makes it dangerous. And I'm not saying, well, I'm not like saying, like, I know I'm bringing that a little too close to Laura Loomer. I love Laura. She's a sweet girl and she does so much work and she's a real patriot. But like, do you like, for all the people that are pro censorship, their big thing is like, oh, well, we have to shut these people up. Hate when it's covert, hate when it's undercover is dangerous. I want to know straight up that somebody's an ass. You know what I mean? Like, don't hide it. I don't want to have to find out later. Like, I want everything on the surface level. That way I can decide what I do and I don't want to deal with. Like, I don't understand why that, you know, and not to mention, like, when you're fighting for censorship, you're ultimately taking away your own rights. Like, you know, this is a funny example of it, but we're seeing, you know, recently there was a South Park episode about, and that like made fun of Prince Harry and
I did. That was really, really funny, you know, over them, you know, wanting to claim everything for themselves, you know, privacy.
And like, I just want to be left alone. I just want to be left alone. And now they're like talking about suing South Park, and it's like, at least she's American. You should understand how free speech works here, how parody works here.
It's ridiculous, honestly.
You could say what you want here, and you know, people like to, well, like freedom of speech is not freedom of consequence. Well, that's absolutely right. Like, if you want to call somebody a name, I have the right to think you're an ass about it. But if I don't know, then I'm, you know, I'm getting into a situation where I'm, you know, potentially not aware of somebody's entire perspective. And like, you could get involved around people who are terrible people and just really good at hiding it.
Yeah, I get what you mean, Kimberly. It is pretty bad, you know, like all the hate speech laws and all that. I really think, you know, it needs to stop with the censorship. So, Kimberly, you bring up Laura Loomer. As we all know, a lot of people have seen a very, very good video, which is very good work by her, going on to, you know, to undercover, you know, DeSantis. It was at the book meeting he did. And
Right.
she was wearing you know, her Trump gear, supporting Donald Trump and exposing, you know, and that police officer came out pretty much, you know, told them to leave, and they had to leave because they were in Trump gear. When you saw that video and seeing the fact that, you know, DeSantis has connections to globalist billionaires like Ken Griffin and this guy called Paul, who has a connection to that, you know, he has a connection to Harvey Weinstein, and there's another globalist, I can't remember his name. And also knowing the fact, you know, that that's a Florida bill, that's correct, that's being written at the moment, that is going to make it, you know, a law for like a floor. It's not passed yet. It's not been passed, but it's going to be law. You know, it's going to make it law for any blogger to, you know, write, you know, something about DeSantis and stuff. Like, what was your opinion on that video? And like, give me your full analysis of what you think of DeSantis and all the dodgy things about him and all the people who look up to him.
Look, I understand why people want to support DeSantis, right? He's seemingly pro-America. I say seemingly. Laura, I really appreciate that she, and I heard somebody say this once, and I like, that's the best description of her. Like, she has bigger balls than most journalists out there. Like, she's willing to like dive head in and do the nitty gritty work. And I think that, you know, I saw a lot of people making the argument like, oh, well, like, you know, there was private space, like they had the right to kick her out, whatever. It just, like, it was a bad look. It made them look like they couldn't actually face their opposition, so they just had them quietly escorted away. I just think that, you know, people make DeSantis out to be this like hero, and I think he's good for Florida for the most part. I think that this, like, new news policy he's trying to enact with journos is obviously gross. We can and should be able to write about anyone and anything. I do think that like I said, I understand both sides. I understand why people want to support him. I understand why people are upset with Donald Trump, and I understand why people think that like they have to be like all in one camp or another. I personally, I don't let him stay in Florida is what I say. Let let him, you know, develop his political ideology a little bit more. Because I think long term that will expose that like he's not really as America first as everybody wants to believe.
Like what disturbing facts about DeSantis have you found out, like in that when you've been like with your team National File, that you found out about him, like that other people don't really speak about?
Well, I mean, this is a criticism you can make of both Trump and DeSantis. They both like pledge a lot of money to Israel, for example, and like
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I think that like and it's not even just specifically that it's Israel for me. We spend too much money on not America. And if you want to talk about America first is putting Americans first. And like people like Ron DeSantis and even Trump to a certain degree put too much, like have too many international connections, have too many international.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Trump has a big connection, to the big pharmaceutical companies. He did nothing to fight against them, especially with Operation Warp Speed. And DeSantis,
Right.
Having a connection to those billionaires, it's really dodgy, Kimberly. Like you're saying, go ahead.
No, it's fine. Like like I said, I feel as if I came into politics a little bit naive and a little bit like wide-eyed, thinking like, oh wow, finally I found the good side. You know what I mean? Like finally I'm like with the good people. And I like slowly over the years I look around and I'm like, oh wow, I'm surrounded by grifters and like, this isn't necessarily what I thought it was. And people aren't necessarily who you think they are. And there are some people, I'm not going to say that there aren't. There are some people who are beautiful, truly honorable patriots, maybe slightly flawed, but who genuinely want better for this country. And then there are people who want to line their pockets. And to say that it is easy to tell the difference between these people is a lie, because it's not. You can't always tell who's being altruistic and who isn't. And it feels like I'm sort of dodging the DeSantis question, but like ultimately there was a lot that I did like. I used to be like, wow, go DeSantis, look at all this cool stuff he's doing. And even Trump, wow, look at Trump, he's going to build the wall, he's going to help save America, he's going to fight for
Which he didn't manage to finish the wall. Exactly, he did a poor job finishing that.
Exactly. And we have illegals pouring into our country, and they are bringing their worst, like there's so many different people where it's been like, oh, I'm so excited to be behind this person, I'm so excited for this movement, and then you realize, oh no.
And you know what, Kimberly? Let's not forget Donald Trump. He didn't pardon Assange. He didn't pardon Ulbricht. He didn't pardon Snowden. He didn't stop the the war in Saudi Arabia, which Saudi Arabia and Yemen, where Saudi Arabia is committing one of the biggest human atrocities at the moment going on in Yemen. He bombed Somalia more than any other president did. He also increased the military budget more than Obama, more than Clinton, more than Bush. It's just absolutely outrageous, And he also, just to let you know, Donald Trump actually hired more crazier neocons in his position more than Obama and more than Clinton did. It's like no difference to the crimes that Obama and Clinton and Bush did.
Well, I mean, these are also like the president of the United States, whether it be Obama or Trump or Biden or, whoever comes next. Even people who understand government better than I do seem to still push this idea that like the president has more power than he actually does. And I know that that's not everybody, but I still think that like the average American for example, doesn't understand the actual power that the president has or doesn't have.
And we all know who controls them: the bankers, the Federal
Yeah.
Reserve, District of Columbia. They're the ones, and that's why the Fed has to go. That's one of the reasons why the District of Columbia Act needs to go to. If you're not ready. Okay, anyways, go ahead.
No, you're totally right. But like I said, it's really hard for somebody like me, because like I do work for a news outlet as my main job. So like I am more aware than a lot of the people that I know, and I'm sorry, excuse me. I consume a lot more news information than most of the people that I know. But even me, like, I'm still like a novice compared to most people. Like, this didn't become a thing for my life until not even like maybe half a decade ago, a little bit more. Like, I am not polished, I'm not poised, I am not the most well educated. I still have my flaws. Like, I didn't, you know, I can't immediately translate the hidden and that sounds a little paranoid, but like I don't. I'm gonna try to explain a little better. Like, I can't find all of the immediate nuances in news copy the way like Laura Loomer can. Like, Laura Loomer, like when the when they announced, when Kevin McCarthy was like, we're gonna give Tucker Carlson the footage for January 6th. Laura Loomer immediately was like, you're not giving him shit. This is not released footage. And when I initially saw the news, I was like, oh, look at that. Like, Tucker Carlson's going to get the news. That's great. And it didn't but like the nuance of like, how are they going to go through 41,000 hours of footage in a week? Like, does he actually have the footage? No, he doesn't. Like, and also like, what they're releasing is gonna, if they release more, when they release more, whatever, it's gonna be very carefully curated. So while it does to a certain extent, like, we now know, we saw the footage of the shaman, the January 6th shaman being basically walked through the Capitol. So like, there is good information being released, but the idea that like, oh, finally the January 6th footage is released, like that's nonsense. But like, even me, who like is more up on the news than, like I said, more the majority of people that I know, at first it totally went over my head. It totally went over my head. So like I said, I'm not here to try to claim authority. I'm not here to try to say that like you should listen to me. I'm here to say that, I'm my main objective in life is to be a mother. Right? I want to raise my kids to be better than I am. I want to help raise true American patriots who will go into the world and make it a better place. And I want to help as much as I can where I'm at. So I will keep working for the National File, because I believe that they are one of the more altruistic places out there to obtain information. We've been sued left and right by people who want to shut us down. We have had headlines stolen from us by big conservative.
Oh, sorry, ladies and gentlemen. We seem to have lost, Kimberly. Hang on a second. Oh, no. Sorry, folks. So, yeah, we were just talking about, what is happening. Sorry, is she coming back on, folks? She's just sorting it out. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I'll just turn my camera on. Sorry, just turn my camera off. Just send her a message. Can you hear me? Can you hear me or no? I can't hear you. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen. Device has gone off, but she'll come right back. Just give her a minute, ladies and gentlemen. We're just sorting out technical difficulties. Stand by for now. No worries, ladies and gentlemen. Please, sorry for the late delay. Kimberly said she's going to be about 2 minutes. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen. I really apologize. The connection's gone off, but she'll be back in about 20 minutes. I'm just going to go on a short intermission break. We'll be right back, folks, with the Welsh Republic podcast, episode 101.
I'm so sorry. I'm so sorry. I don't know how that happened.
No worries. And ladies and gentlemen, she's back. Sorry, ladies and gentlemen, for that delay. Kim just had a bit of a connection problem. Thank you, everybody, for being patient and waiting for the intermission. But welcome back, Kim. No worries. That's all good. A bit of a bad connection problem. That's all good. It happens.
All right. I'm so sorry. I just had a moment of like, ah. So
we were talking about like how you wanting to raise a family, how you were like wanting to talk about you.
The most important thing that I will do is be a mother to my children, right? So while I kind of, like I said, I came into politics really heavy-handed, and I was like, I'm gonna, show these libs why they're dumb and why they need to switch sides like I did. And at this point, I just want to help as much as I can. And I think that, like, primarily that means that I need to raise my children better than my parents raised me. And I'm not saying that to diss my parents. I love them very much. They did a lot of really great things for me, but I still ended up a libtard for way too long. I think that, like I said, I have very little faith in the Republican Party right now. I have very little faith in both political parties, to be completely frank. But my main objective in life is to raise kids and to make them better, and also to help share real news in a way that people can find it and have access to good information. And that's why I stay with National File. Quite frankly, once I'm at the point where I can just be a stay-at-home mom and have that make financial sense, hopefully that'll happen at some point in my life. But I would rather I would love to stay at home and bake banana bread and clean my house and welcome my husband home with a martini. And, like, I would love that. Like, thanks, feminists. But I think our country's in a lot of trouble. I think that, like,
it is, not just America. New Zealand is in trouble. Well, New Zealand's okay, but New Zealand, Australia, but a lot of the West is, Kimberly, when I look at you right now, with you being a mother, let's say this. Let's say if you could go on a time machine, right, and travel back in time, let's say to another universe, and see yourself, what would you tell your young self who's like, let's say in 2014 or 13, who's going around drinking and is wanting to like give up? What would you tell your young self that, like, seeing her dismarriage and seeing her being a mother and say, being a mother's dumb and all that stuff? What would you say to that young self? And what would you tell her that you're going to be missing out on?
See, I will answer your question. The problem with my young self is that even if I showed up pregnant and, like, was like, this is the way the world works, kid, I'd probably be like, shut the hell up. But if I can go back, I would tell her to stop worrying so much about what other people think. And I know that sounds super generic, but, like, it was a major problem, like, especially, like, when I first started, like I said, talking about political ideology. It was scary because, like, I'm adopted, and as an adopted person, like, abandonment and, like, attachment are two big issues for me. So, like, as I was seeing all these friends of mine, like, disappear, basically, because when I started getting more right wing, it was like, do I really want to lose all of this? Do I really want to, like, start over and, like, find a new friend group and, like, reestablish myself? And if I could go back in time to, like, the person that I was even just before this, I would just say, like, please pay attention. Please really pay attention. Like, take an honest and true emotional inventory. And that's what I do with my friends now. Instead of trying to like browbeat red pills into them, I ask them just straight up, like, are you happy? You know, like, are you genuinely happy? And 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. 9 times out of 10. And I think even the 10th time is a lie. And like, I know that's a very arrogant thing for me to claim, but like, I'm sorry, I live that lifestyle. And like, I've lived with a lot of these people in that lifestyle, and they're all depressed, and they're all just barely making it by, and they're all, you know, doing a lot of drugs, or they're having unprotected sex, or they're doing any other, you know, a lot of things that will harm them ultimately. And it's just a very stressful and a very depressing lifestyle. And they give this, you know, Hollywood especially has this very glamorous depiction of like
yeah,
heroin.
which is the modern day Babylon, pretty much, or Solomon
Right.
and Gomorrah, we all know.
It's like all very, you know, chic and very luxurious, and oh, we're enjoying the parties, and um you know, the lifestyle is so much fun, and I love having random sex with people, and I love like doing drugs and staying out all night, and like ultimately nobody really likes that. You wake up the next day and you feel like shit and you hate yourself. Um Sorry, I know the dogs are gonna start barking again.
Brain freeze.
Yeah, it was a total brain freeze. As like I said, I literally like.
Oh, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. The connection went off again. Oh no, she's back. She's back. Keep going. Keep going. Your audio is off again. The audio. Oh, ladies and gentlemen, sorry about that. We got another, bad connection problem. Kimberly again. We'll just have to restart again. We'll be back, folks. Another intermission. Sorry about that. She's probably just busy, maybe sorting something out with her kids at the moment. We'll be right back. Sorry about that, folks. No worries. That's all good. And you was like you were saying before, about the whole, you wanting to be
I'm
being a
sorry.
mother and,
I'm sorry.
people being unhappy. People being unhappy.
I think that when people are really emotionally honest with themselves about the mentality behind being on the left wing, it's very upsetting. And like, you know, like even one of the last conversations I had with somebody who was very close to me, we were talking about getting married and having kids. And I was saying, you know, ultimately, like, it's very rewarding. Don't you want to see your genetic lineage carry on? Don't you want to, you know, like, that is the biological imperative of being alive, right? To like continue furthering your genetic line, to populate the earth, so to speak. And it was this like it dissolved into this conversation about like, well, I don't love myself and I don't like myself, so why would I want to replicate me into the world? And like, while I understand that, that's a very depressed way to be living, you know. That is depression right there. That
I know.
it's very
It's not very
self-defeating.
easy, isn't it?
And like I said, if you break down a lot of the reason I want to go back to doing my mental health podcast is I think that even if these people don't like me and they don't agree with me, if you have just like a frank an honest conversation about lifestyle and about ideology, and then you break it down to like, okay, but like, are you happy? It's like, is the lifestyle that you're leading and the beliefs that you're espousing bringing you joy? And like, can I say that about the right wing? Like, yeah, there's a lot of stuff that like is cringe and I don't like, but ultimately, what are right wing values? Traditionalism, spirituality, religious value, community,
The nuclear
family,
family. The
nuclear
nuclear family.
family, and I'm not saying that only people can only ever be happy in this situation and in that dynamic, but people are historically more happy in that dynamic. People, like, we are social creatures. We are community creatures. We, we seek approval even before social media, even before all of that. You want community approval. You want to have a group of people that you belong to. And I think that like the values on the right wing bring that forth, whereas the values of the left are a little more hedonistic and they're more self-serving, and I think make people depressed. And like when I'll say this too, when I was a little kid, my dad used to tell me like about the when I was still very like pro gay marriage and all this, my father used to tell me like, being gay is a harder life. I feel bad for homosexuals because, and I wish that they could change. I wish they would decide otherwise because it is a harder life. And I used to think, wow, that's such a bigoted thing to say, but really he's right. Like it is a very, like hookup culture, especially in the gay community, is much more a thing. Suicide rates are really high. There was the AIDS epidemic. Like there's a, and that it's not just homosexuality. It's a lot of these other, like feminists. I don't know a single feminist who isn't like suicidal.
I know, it's absolutely insane, isn't it? It's ridiculous, and I'm glad, you got at, like, you're a more happier person than you are, Kimberly. So, Kimberly, there was another question I wanted to ask you. So, as we all know, Donald Trump, obviously, right now, it looks to me like he's going to be, selecting a new VP, which a lot of people is going to be feeling it's Carrie Lake. But there were rumors Marjorie Taylor Greene was going to be his, vice president, which is going to be absolutely bad. What is your opinion to Kevin McCarthy becoming the House leader, and what things do you not like about Kevin McCarthy? And if you confronted Marjorie Taylor Greene and Kevin McCarthy in private, what would you say to them, and what lessons would you tell them, and what would you say to them, and what would you do and tell them to what would you give your opinion to them when you confront them?
Well, as people who follow the National File knows, we ran the narrative on slamming McCarthy for several months up to the up to the speaker vote. Marjorie Taylor Greene, as we like to call her, is okay, like I said before, I'm not the authority here. So even for these people, I'm not going to pretend that I am more in the know than Marjorie Taylor Greene, I'm sorry, and Kevin McCarthy. But the fact is that these are people who are Republicans in name only. They are not actually America first. They are covering up for the crypto scandal, that people funneling money to defeat America first candidates.
Ukraine. Mm-hmm.
And I think that these people, like I said, remember I talked about how there's these people in politics and you think that they're about the good fight and you think that they have the best intentions, and then you see a little under the curtain and you realize that they are for themselves, they are evil, they are not what they try to portray themselves as. And that Marjorie Taylor Greene is the epitome of that for me.
Yeah, very disappointing, Kimberly, because I thought Marjorie Taylor Greene was against the elite. Back in 2020, she was doing such a good job of exposing so much of the fact with the COVID stuff, and then she just went down the wire. And it's just when the information came out, like what you and Laura exposed about her and other media outlets. I think it was fantastic.
Don't give
what
me
you
credit
guys
for.
did, you
I
know?
really appreciate you giving me credit for that, but don't give that. That's Laura Loomer was
Oh
behind
yeah,
that
credit goes to her. Credit goes
for
to her. In
sure.
fact, credit goes to all of you guys who don't exposing her. What do you think, Kimberly? What would so I see that Laura Loomer does these confrontation videos. What do you think that Laura Loomer would do if she confronted Marjorie Taylor Greene outside of office? And
Well,
what
I
do you think
mean,
she would say to him?
she would hold her accountable. She does that all the time. She brings receipts, so to speak, as the kids would say. Um, she she has proved over and over again that Miss Trader Green is contradicts herself all the time, and like she was very much behind Laura Loomer until Laura started pointing.
Oh, the audio went off again, folks. Sorry about that. She'll be back, Kimberly. Sorry, she's just sorting it out. Sorry, we'll have to go to another intermission.
You waited for. Wait.
And Kimberly's back. Sorry about that, ladies and gentlemen.
Can I just want to take this time to say that Welsh Republic podcast has been the most accommodating and the most lovely person. There is no other podcaster on the face of the planet that would have dealt with as many problems as we've had leading up to and including this interview. So, like, if you're not following this person already, click and the like and subscribe and just like all the props. I'm so sorry. This has been just like the most schizo ranting and like I didn't.
No worries, Kimberly. That's all good. What's up with the connection? Is it just bad in your area, or?
No, every time that I just turned off the notifications for it. I have a posting schedule, and I am, as Alex Jones would say, I'm a little bit retarded. So if I don't set alarms for myself to like remind myself to do certain things, I will just forget. And that's just, I have a mom brain. It's just, and I used to, like I said, I used to be a bit of a degenerate. So I did my damage while I did my damage. But every time my alarm would interrupt, it would turn off the thing. So I thought I had turned it off the first time it happened, and it kept happening, but I figured out how to turn it off now. We're good. We're good to go. It's not going to happen. But thank you for being so accommodating. And for...
How long do you want to keep going on for?
Whatever you want, man. The kids are all set. They're fed and happy. And
no worries. So Kim, like you were mentioning about Marjorie Taylor Greene Laura Loomer exposing Marjorie Taylor Greene,
right?
With all that scandals. What other, things about Kevin McCartney do you not like? Because the fact that he's a WEF member and he's becoming the Speaker of the House, that's not very good, isn't it?
No, I just think that, like I said, the whole McCarthy thing was, the Republicans were trying to hold his feet to the fire to get him to agree to certain things before they would allow the speaker vote to go through. And, they got him to make the handshake agreement, but what Laura Loomer and what all these other prominent people are pointing out is like, these are promises in name only. These are not things that, we expect him to follow through on, including this supposed release of the January 6th footage, which is not really a release of the footage at all. It's just more of the same. Like, this person makes a promise, this person says they're going to do this, that, and the other, and then they don't. And it's a
Kimberly, keep talking. I just need to put my laptop on charge. Sorry about that. Keep talking.
You're fine. It's a tale as old as time, and it's, the trope of every politician is that no politician keeps their word, and it's just, in this particular instance, it's easier to highlight because these people historically and continue to hold up the tradition of not doing what they say they're going to do, and saying that they represent certain ideologies and then acting in ways that proves that they don't. And by and large, like, even with the availability of information, most people don't do their due diligence. And, even I, to a certain extent, have highlighted, like when I first heard about the January 6th footage, I was a little excited until I realized, like, wait, this isn't actually a release. You know what I mean? Like, even somebody like me who is actively involved in this every single day, there's stuff that goes over my head because I'm not a professional. And so, like, for like the average person who doesn't have the time to watch the news all day, every day, it's a lot less easy for them even. And like, if I still miss stuff, like, the average person is missing a lot. So, that's where you get the people who are supporting McCarthy and who are still supporting Marjorie Taylor Greene. People to this day are like, oh, it's news that the January 6th people were just walked through the building. No, like that footage had actually been out before. We've been saying this for years. Let's talk about COVID, like, oh, the vaccine is dangerous. And you have Scott Adams like, why didn't anybody warn us? We've been warning you for years. For years and years and years. People have been, and Laura Loomer is Laura Loomer and Alex Jones are two of the most prominent people that I can think of when it comes to warning people about something that's coming way in advance.
Let's not forget David Icke too. He's another
David
guy
Icke,
that's
yeah.
done. Yeah, he's done another fantastic job. Exposing a lot of this.
There's a lot of people that I'm probably missing. But there are people who have all but ruined their reputations because they're willing to come out about information when it's unpopular to speak of it. And then later, when it becomes mainstream, everyone forgets about these guys. They don't remember that Laura Loomer and Alex Jones were the first to be axed from Twitter. And they said, they're going to come after you next. And guess what? They came after everybody next. And then they said, oh no, they're coming after everyday people. And it was like, yeah, we warned you. And it was like, oh, well, you know, Kevin McCarthy is not actually for America First. Like, wow, that's news. That's news to some people. You know, and I can't fault them because, like I said, I can't expect people. I say that I follow stuff about like a lot more than the average person, right? And I still have flaws and I still have gaps because ultimately I am a mom first. But like Laura, who like has her finger on the pulse, is like going out there and sharing this information with people only to like have these other big publications and all these other big names take credit for her work years later after spending those last few years calling people like her crazy or conspiratorial or, you know, mentally unstable.
I get what you mean.
It's like I said, like yesterday's conspiracy theory is today's mainstream news.
It's weird, isn't it? It's absolutely insane, isn't it, Kim?
And like it doesn't even feel like vindication anymore. And like I can understand why people are so jaded in this field to a degree, because it's like, you know, finally you accept what I've been saying is the truth, or you know, like there are still people who will insist that that former President Donald Trump said that Nazis are fine people. There are still people who will say that not only did he say that, but that he told people to inject bleach to save themselves from COVID. These things are patently false. These things are very easy to confirm as false, but people still believe it. And that, like I said, that translates over into the people who still like believe that Marjorie Taylor Greene is an America First candidate. Like, there's a lot of stuff that you can look up about her that you could say, like, oh, well, look at this or look at that. But she still backed McCarthy, and she still, like, all but ignored, you know, the scandal with, you know, the Humpty Dumpty Institute and with the
what's the Humpty Dumpty Institute?
I shouldn't be that's if you want to go into that whole scandal, go to thenationalfile.com, search Marjorie Taylor Greene and HGI. We have that totally covered there. That is like that's like an hour long of a conversation, and I'm not caffeinated enough for it right now. But you will find as much information as you can on thenationalfile.com. Go check them out. That's where you want to source the information that I'm talking about. But like I said, it as far as like keeping up with who's doing what, it's very hard for the average person to do that, right? Like you know, it's hard to follow all the little nuances. It's hard to find where you land on the spectrum, because I feel as if, you know, there's constantly different, it's a ping pong battle of like information, whereas like, all right, here's something that comes up over here, but here's the counter to that, and here's more evidence. And then, you know, like I said, these stories are constantly developing, and these situations are constantly developing. And for people like, God bless people like Alex Jones, David Icke, Laura Loomer, you know,
Edward Snowden, Julian Assange, and, you know, even Vladimir Putin. You know, a lot of people don't like Vladimir Putin, but I think he's, you know, honestly, you may disagree with me on him. I think he's the best leader in the world, and a lot of people say he's a dictator. I don't think he's a dictator.
Well, I
think it's a load of nonsense.
We've been covering on the net, and I haven't had my finger is close on the pulse of this one, but I post all of our stuff, so I do at least read the stuff that we get pretty frequently. And we've been there is this journalist, an NBC journalist who is interviewing people in Crimea, and who were asking
Yeah,
like,
I
and
saw that, and apparently he got cancelled. I
he
saw
got
that. I just saw
canceled.
that.
He got
Yeah,
canceled
you know,
because people in Crimea are saying, no, we're for Vladimir Putin. We are
yeah.
Russian. We are not
And
Ukrainian.
Kimberly, can I just bring out a statistic? There was actually a statistic that showed that 95% of Russian people wanted to join Crimea. Wanted to join the Russian Federation. It's just like eastern part of Ukraine, like Donbass and, you know, Donetsk. Well, they wanted to be a part, but the media is like, no, these part, dude. They were never a part of the Ukraine, and Ukraine has been showing these areas since like 2014. It's terrible, you know.
Yeah, and even like we talk about how easy it is to spread disinformation. We're seeing a lot of stuff about the news that supposedly is coming out of the Ukraine, which is turning out to be patently false. You know what I'm saying? Like,
Oh, absolutely. Like Ukraine is one of the most corrupt countries in the world. It's like an absolute cesspit of corruption, you know. It's just, and especially full of far right Nazis, you know, full of it's just insanity, you know. The Azar Krateli, you know what goes on there, you know.
yeah, no, it's so funny to me that like we're so anti-Nazi until it comes to the Ukraine. And like these are people who are actually flying, swastikas and wearing
Yeah,
Nazi
I know,
badges.
and also, you know, like what you know, doing satanic worship, and also doing all this. Oh, it's just insane. It's
Yeah.
absolutely insane. You have like the schools, Kimberly, in Ukraine. You know, schools teaching kids, you know, neo-Nazi propaganda to kill Russians, to kill. It's just, my God, man. I feel sorry for a lot of the Ukrainians. You know, I feel sorry for the Ukrainian people that they have to deal with this corrupt government. And as we all know, Ukraine is being used as a testing ground for the New World Order. You could argue that
Right.
Israel and like Saudi Arabia and Australia, but I think, you know, that's another story for another day.
Well, that's the thing I want people to think about is like, with the availability of information, how it's still so easy to convince people of something that isn't true. And I would like to impart on people that like maybe we should be taking a more a stronger magnifying glass to the world history, because if it's so easy to lie now, imagine how easy it is to lie about stuff when there wasn't the internet.
Oh, the military-industrial complex is one of the biggest lies. They lied about Vietnam. They lied about the Korean War. They lied about 9/11. They lied about the war on terror. They lied about World War II. They didn't technically lie, but whatever. Would you believe Pearl Harbor? They lied about many other things, and the military-industrial complex is one of the biggest criminals. Kimberly, I had a little thought the other day that made me think that if Ron DeSantis was president, or Trump. Now, I think Trump would do this. You can argue Trump wouldn't. Depends. I'm a libertarian. I don't support Trump. I used to be a fan of him, but not anymore. And there's a theory. I have a theory that, let's say in 2024, Donald Trump wins. Then 2025, China invades Taiwan. I have a feeling that Donald Trump or DeSantis is going to do the same thing which what Biden did to Ukraine by giving so much money to Taiwan and all that America first. By the way, your dog is so cute. What's his name?
Marshall.
Oh, he's adorable. But yeah, like I was saying, like giving all this money to, you know, Taiwan. Do you have a feeling that Trump and DeSantis are going to do that same thing if China was to invade Taiwan? And do you think that, you know, do you think Americans should stay out of the war in Taiwan and stay out of, you know, foreign countries' business?
Yeah, I think America should stay at the F out of everybody's business right now. Like, when people like to use the house on fire analogy. When your house is on fire, you can't worry about your neighbor's house. You know what I mean? Like, and our house is burning down. Like, we've already lost so much of our country. It brings me back to the point about illegal immigration, like the idea that like a lot of democratic and left-leaning ideologies are like altruistic on their face but don't actually make sense when you dig into them at all. And like in the sense of like help, foreign aid, the reason that they tell you that they come to America, or the reason that they're like, oh, we need to embrace all these foreigners, is because they have it so much worse where they were than they do now, when we find out that, quite frankly, a lot of them come here and they realize they have it worse off here. They're not And we still spend like all sorts of money on them, but they're still living in poverty.
When America could be spending it on healthcare, they could be spending on social development, they could be spending it on other things. Kimberly.
I mean, we just came out. We're in financial collapse. People are, lots of people haven't been working. Lots of people,
Kimberly, it's because of the banking system. And I read a long time ago, Kimberly, that if the military-industrial complex, if it stopped spending for 2 weeks, if it stopped, spending for 2 weeks, it could feed the world over. Do you know that? It could,
right. I mean, I think that like the idea that like, we don't have enough resources, quite frankly, we're not there yet.
Of course you guys do. America is the second most country with the second most resources in the world. It's just Bill Gates and all those corporations that run it.
Yeah, but the fact of the matter is, like, while there are kids that are starving in America, while there are families that are struggling in America, that are American, I'm talking about American families, not these border jumpers who, America's the only one, basically the only place in the world where, like, everybody is a citizen. You just have to get across the border. You know what I mean? And we're still considered the most bigoted and the most racist. And it's nonsense.
America, hey, Kimberly, America is not a racist country. It's not a racist country. It's just like New Zealand. A lot of people will say New Zealand is a racist country. No, it's not. New Zealand is a very diverse country. A lot of people will say that China is a racist country, but actually China is a pretty diverse country. I mean, you would probably disagree with that. A lot of people will say that Russia is a racist country, but then Russia is also a pretty diverse country. A lot of people will say that France and England and UK are racist countries, but yet they have a lot of different ethnic races living among them. It's just stupid. Ugh.
Well, okay, I wish I could credit this comedian directly, but I don't know his name. I watched a reel on Instagram the other day of a bit of his comedy, and he was talking about, like, everybody says America is racist, everybody says America is a bigoted country, but that's just not true. Like, we have some of the most ethnic diversity in the world, and the reason that you think that there's so much racism, it's just because there's so many races that exist under the umbrella of America. And like, people are saying, well, look at Sweden. Sweden's not racist because Sweden is full of Swedish people. And as soon as they started letting in immigrants, they almost elected the next Hitler. So like, this idea that like, oh, boo America, America is so terrible. Like, no, we're the only, I think his joke, basically, the summary of it was like, we're the only place that's like, we don't like you, but come on in anyway.
Mm-hmm.
Like.
I get what you mean, Kimberly. It is pretty safe.
Mm-hmm.
Kimberly, I have a question I wanted to ask you. So, what am I saying? So, one other question I wanted to ask you now. This is a big, big thing that everybody is talking about. As we all know, it was nearly a month ago. In early February, a train derailment happened in East Palestine, United States.
Yeah.
And I can tell you, as a Welshman living in New Zealand, seeing the most powerful guy in the world, I mean, you could argue the bankers are more powerful than him, but seeing Joe Biden not visit that place, East Ohio, Palestine, which is just some of the worst environmental disaster in the history of the United States. The chemicals are worse. The chemicals are very bad. I watched a very good video by this girl called Red X Volume, Kimberly. You should go check her out. I had her on my show. Shout out to her. She did a very good video on that. And especially how you have the safety instruction of the United States saying, the water is safe to drink and all that, but then yet you have chickens dying, you have animals dying, you have people's skin rashing, the skin of people rashing, and you have people dying of chemical poisoning and struggling not to breathe. And there's a lot of conspiracy theorists are saying that maybe this could be the thing that makes the depopulation plan of the United States happen that the New World Order has been planning, especially when there was a website that said the United States population is going to be dropping from whatever it is to 15%. And maybe when you look at this crisis in the East Ohio Palestine incident, how angry does that make you feel seeing that that went on for 2 months? And do you think that is America's Chernobyl? And do you think that this is just another plan of the New World Order? Do you think that this is the thing that maybe is going to be used to bring in the FEMA camps? And do you think we're going to see like really bad side effects, like maybe cancer or like even horrible things to come in the next few years, especially knowing like that region is next to a river?
Right. So yes, I actually, that was one of the first things I ever tweeted about it, was like, this is America's Chernobyl. And nobody's taking it seriously. At least no, I shouldn't say nobody is taking it seriously. That's not true. There are a lot of people who have gone to are on the ground and reporting from
Do you have anyone from your group who's reporting over there?
No, I don't believe we have anyone on the scene, but we have been following up and contacting our using our contacts and reaching out to people and helping to promote the people who are on the scene, doing the on the ground investigating. We do have people who do travel and do in-person investigating, but we don't have the kind of budget that a lot of these bigger companies have. We haven't
Kimberly,
been around as long.
when you, with all the stories you've seen now come out of East Palestine, Ohio, what would you say is the most creepiest one, that like the most evil, like diabolic one you've seen, like of someone having like a bad effect or of health thing, or having
I
like
don't know if there's any one in particular, but the what you're seeing that is what actually freaks me out more is the idea, and this is very conspiratorial and people are going to say, oh, you're insane, but like the idea, I've been studying up on predictive programming and that kind of like how entertainment predicts life sort of thing. And not that long ago, Netflix released a movie,
White Noise.
White Noise.
Yeah,
it's called White Noise, about a train derailment in East Palestine, Ohio. It's like, it's enough to make you crazy. Like, at what point do you stop believing that these things are a coincidence? You know what I mean? Like, it feel like I said, it feels crazy to even say, but like, oh my goodness, it's okay. I promise it's okay. Oh my, hold on 1 second.
No worries. Well, yes, ladies and gentlemen, the East Palestine Ohio incident is one of the worst accidents in the whole United States history, probably the worst. I think Joe Biden not wanting to visit is just not acceptable. He really should be doing his job, and I pray for the East Palestine Ohio victims that are having to suffer from that bad incident, and it's not very good,
The problem,
anyway, she's back, ladies and gentlemen.
Sorry, I have all sorts of loud animals in my house. The problem that I see is that, like I said, it's easy to distort information and it's easy to suppress information. And when you talk about like the crazy information to come out of Palestine, what is crazier to me, the side that is like this predictive programming, where it's like this, we just happened to like have a thing about it, and then there was the flight that crash, I'm talking about, with people who were going to East Palestine to do research and to assess the situation there.
The water, the water and the bubbles that just don't look normal at all. Exactly.
And we're going to see, like, this is going to have long lasting implications for a large radius around. And thankfully where I'm at, like, we're not necessarily as affected, but as far as like recycling these chemicals into the air when it comes to rainfall, as far as like the water feeding into other streams, into other sources of water, these are all things that are going to have long-term and very negative side effects for the locals and for everybody in the surrounding areas. And we aren't going to know what those effects are going to look like until they're happening. And I think that is a really scary thing to think about. Like, how many people are going to be infertile now, or how many people are going to have genetic mutations because of this? Like, what are future generations in that area going to look like if they exist? I don't know. like I said, I don't claim expertise. What I do is I do as much research as I possibly can. I try to look at everything, every situation and every topic from every point of the spectrum that you can. And from there, I try to figure out what makes the most sense and what has the most support behind the information. And right now, all anyone can say with any certainty is that the situation there is dire. It's not getting the attention from the president because he would rather funnel money into the Ukraine because ultimately that lines his own pockets and the pockets of his constituents. And it was nice that Trump went, right? But even that, like,
yeah, credit to him. Even as a libertarian, I've got to give credit to him.
I think that he took the opportunity to help Americans again, and I think that was a very good thing to happen. But like I said, it's hard to talk about something like East Palestine without sounding conspiratorial because, as we know, like train derailments happen. Like train derailments are a very common thing. It is very easy for a train to derail, and our infrastructure is not very great. But like basically, like this is an internal attack on America. Our food factories are burning down. Our trains are derailing and excreting toxic chemicals into the environment. They're poisoning our food across the board anyway. They're trying to force us to consume seed oils and bugs instead of raw milk and meat. And they want us sick and unhealthy, and they want us in toxic environments. And who's they? Foreign nationals, national dissidents. There's a lot of people who are anti-American.
And let's not forget the connection with the Norfolk Sunderland company with BlackRock. Let's not forget that.
Yeah, exactly. There's so many levels, and like the fact is that the most corrupt of them all, the people who are really pulling the puppet strings, like we don't know their names, we don't know their faces. There are people that we can, there's the George Soroses and the Bezos and the Bidens and the Obamas and the Epsteins and the people whose names we know. But the people who are really running the show, like they are not out there. They are not the people who we're coming after necessarily. And I think once you understand that like the people whose names we do know are more the puppeteer, are being puppeted. You know what I mean? They're the sideshow. They're the distraction. They distract you over here so they can get away with doing stuff over here. Like even the basketball player who is like, arrested in Russia, like all of these other little things that go on to serve as
and also, let's not forget the balloons.
Yeah, the balloon, exactly. Like there's just it's so crazy in the news space because you have to filter through so much garbage, and like it's a very fast-paced news cycle as well. So like it's very hard to navigate. I'm not, I I applaud people who make this their life. I really do. Because it's so difficult as far as like the toll it takes on your mentality. But like I said, that these are all positions people need to be taking up. People need to be informing others. People need to be immersed in these situations. And people who are going to East Palestine, like we're talking about East Palestine, like they're risking their lives to expose the truth. And who knows what that's going to do to them long term. And who knows how much of this information is even going to be accepted or believed, or how long it's going to take. Like, is it going to be until like people are dying left and right and you can't hide it anymore? Like, it's I don't mean to be very black pilled about it. I try to share as much white pill as I can, but it's very hard to not have a negative outlook when you see all of these horrible things happening from train derailments and toxic waste being emitted into our environment, from wars in foreign nations to illegitimate elections. There's a lot to keep up with.
Kimberly, what was your thoughts on, Pete Buttigieg? Also just to let you know, let's not forget one of his friends, I think one of his close acquaintances got, caught for childhood porn, by the way, which was fucking disgusting for him to get caught with that.
But that's not a homosexual agenda or anything, whatever.
Anyway. What did you think about the fact that it took him so long, 3 weeks to go and visit? And what was your thought on the video where Savannah Hernandez was confronting him?
I don't actually think I've seen that video. But I mean, it's typical. It's typical. Politicians like Pete Buttigieg are all about pretending altruism and acting as if they're for the people, but they are for themselves. And the fact that it took him so long only proves that he doesn't actually have the interests of the people in mind. It's very lazy. I think that they're very much like conservative bankers controlled opposition. Like, obviously the Democrats have their controlled opposition, and I think that the script that they're being given right now is like, this is not a big deal, don't treat it like a big deal, because then you're just going to feed into this narrative that we don't have our shit together. And like, it's just the case. Like, you'd rather send billions of dollars to the Ukraine when finding out more and more that like a lot of the stuff that we're being told about what's going on there is a lie, instead of like helping your own country. If you just think about it from an ecological standpoint, there's a lot that we don't know, and there's a lot that needs to be researched. The fact that like FEMA wasn't there immediately should have been a red flag to everybody.
Well, FEMA's evil. They're an evil organization.
I agree that they're very evil, but they won't even. It's very telling that they won't even acknowledge it as a disaster. You know what I mean? Like, it, like I said, people, they're puppeteers that are controlling these people whose names we do know. And do I understand the motives? No, I don't. Because why would you want to not immediately help someone in your own country, especially when like toxic spills will affect a giant radius around where they happen? That's certainly not showing any favor to the argument they're trying to make, that they're not for the depopulation of this country.
And Kimberly, have you ever seen this weird map? There was a weird, statistic that I saw. This was just, take this as a pinch of salt, where it said that the United States population was going to drop in 2025 drastically. Did you see that theory before? Have you seen that?
I probably I don't know if I'm thinking the same thing. But yeah, I mean, Bill Gates, all of them, like, they have been very, very open that like depopulation is the goal. You know what I mean? Like, that in order to save the planet, we need to reduce the population. And that was like Operation Warp Speed. Even that was like a big thing. Like, we're finding out more and more that the vaccine like causes infertility and or all sorts of other problems. Like, the idea that we can trust our government is a joke, no matter what side of the political spectrum you're on. Like, all these people like who were like, who vehemently believe that the government's not to be trusted, suddenly we're like, oh, well, like, now we have to trust the science, and everybody's just trying to look out for us. They really have our best interests at heart. Anybody who still believes that is naive. And I can understand why some people will want to stay that way, because it's much easier to just believe that everything's going according to plan and everything's fine. But the white pill of that is the only way to correct the problem is to acknowledge that there is a problem, right? So
Kimberly, I will just finish off before I finish off this interview, even though sorry, we've had a lot of delays, which has been okay.
I'm sorry.
Even though you're all good, Kimberly, don't worry about it. So I have one last question. So as you all know, you probably heard that in Texas right now, they're going to be voting, I think it's in October or November, for independence. So this last question, come 2024, 2025, how do you see the 2024 election going down? And do you think if it ends up going, do you think we could see the potential of like Texas and Florida splitting and New Hampshire splitting? And do you think these states would be able to survive on their own?
I mean, no. I don't think it's gonna. I think that's like a very unrealistic thing. There's too many. Like, I understand like the concept of like the national divorce between the left and the right is idealistic at best and foolhardy at worst. It doesn't. It's of course it would make sense. Like, we all believe this thing, you all believe this thing. Let's like we'll go our separate ways and everything will be good. But ultimately that's not going to happen. It's not like a realistic possibility without like causing collapse and total dysfunction. The America already looks weak to the rest of the world right now. Like, our military looks weak, our infrastructure is weak, our commander in chief is demented and molested his daughter in the shower, and it's
disgusting.
So it's I mean, it was in her diary, so like you want to say it's fake or whatever.
Yeah, I did see that. That was really disgusting. That was.
So like, I understand why people talk about it as if it's like this
Oh, no, ladies and gentlemen. Oops, sorry, we lost Kimberly again. Oh, no, it's been... sorry, 1 minute. We'll just see if she's doing okay. All right. But yeah, folks, it is dire, what is going on, in East Palestine, Ohio. I really feel, that especially, when you look at the videos where the government is just not admitting, that the FDMA is just lying, and it's just insane. But we're just going to wait for her to come back on. She's back on, folks, and here she is. Like you're saying, go ahead, Kim.
Yeah, I've said this many times, I'm not in a position where I can claim authority. I'm not going to say that I'm an authority. I stay as informed as I can, and I share the information that I can that I believe has enough support behind it to be valid. I don't know what's going to happen in 2024. I know a lot of people who are really like Babe Ruth calling the shots, and they're really good at what they do. I don't think a national divorce is realistic. I don't think that I don't have people say like, oh, are you pro Carrie Lake? Are you pro Trump? Are you pro DeSantis? I don't really like. Do I really think any one of them is like really the best candidate? Not really, but like I don't have another option. I don't have somebody.
And let's not forget the Republicans didn't do enough to fight election fraud. They didn't.
Exactly. How do you trust the integrity of our elections? You can't. Like,
United States elections are like third world. It's funny because I actually had someone on my show for people called Convo. They're from the Convo Couch, and they've like been to Honduras and like Peru, and like these countries like Colombia, Peru, and like Honduras have better election laws than the United States has. Even a lot of people in Eastern Europe. And just to let you know, Kimberly, there's a person. Just to let you know, Eric. I just want to give a shout out to Eric and Lila Hart. They did an absolutely brilliant documentary called The America History of Voter Fraud. And it says that your voter fraud in the United States has been happening since 1864. And they pointed out that the elections in the United States are just so third world. It's a brilliant documentary. You should definitely check it out, Kimberly. And it's just insane,
Right. Absolutely. Um, yeah, like I said, it's hard to like believe anything on its face anymore. Like the more I've been involved, like I said, I came into this very wide-eyed and very like, I'm on the right side of history now, and it's not so black and white. It's not. It's there's a lot more nuance to it, and I don't have the time to follow things as closely as somebody who like does, like I said, like the Laura Loomers of the world, like the Alex Joneses, like the David Ikes, like my team at National File, Mil Fritsch, like all of our reporters, a lot of them, you know, dedicate their lives to uncovering these truths, and to me to a certain extent have done the same. I've done like exposés on the FBI. I've um I've covered my own major exclusives to like try to bring forth light on injustices on slights on free speech, attacks on the Second Amendment. These are things that I've very strongly fought for, but it's hard to parse through information as an average person to figure out what is real and what is not, and who is really looking out for you and who isn't. And I think that that is the biggest problem with the political landscape right now, is because it there are very clear good guys and bad guys in certain situations, but they're not always good guys. The bad guys aren't always bad guys across the board, and the good guys aren't always good guys across the board.
I get what you mean, Kimberly.
And you have to be willing to point that out. And that's where I'm at.
So, Kimberly, before we finish up, is there anything else you would like to say? And of course, where can people find you?
Yeah, I would like to say thank you so much for dealing with all of my nonsense and waiting so very patiently to have me on the show. You're wonderful, and everybody should follow and watch these episodes. Maybe not mine. I don't know. You can watch as much or as little of my episodes as you want. I am currently. You can find my work over at the National File. I write periodically. I'm more so behind the scenes, helping do with the live streams and the digital work. But they do amazing work at the National File. I can't say enough good things about them. They are new-ish as far as being established, but we cover real news, America's new choice for real news, nationalfile.com. And you can find me at Coulter Culture pretty much on every social media. I'm really most active. I don't really do my own social media as much anymore. I'm kind of active on Twitter and Instagram. I'm trying to, as I've been the last few years, make the switch to more alt tech. I'll probably be posting videos more often to Rumble and stuff like that. But the big project I want to like reach out feelers for and get help with is I'm writing a book. I've been writing a book for the last several years. It's about it's evolved. It was just going to be about millennials, but now it's about the generational differences between generations X, Y, and Z. And I'm going to be doing a lot of interviews with a lot of really cool people. I'm hopeful. I'm going to be interviewing Bill Maher. I'm going to be interviewing. I'm hopeful to interview Bill Maher. I think I'm going to be able to get that to happen. And I'm going to try to interview a bunch of other people. I want to interview Ann. I want to interview Tim Pool. I want to interview Stick Hexenhammer. There's a lot of people on that list. And basically, like, I'm going to be breaking down like what has the decline of the individual from generation to generation, and like the pussification of the younger generations. And it's going to be a lot about like the influence of media, the influence of pharmaceuticals, participation culture, and it's going to be like there's a lot of research that went into it, but there's going to be a lot of opinion. It's going to be a lot of fun. I'm just going to start doing interviews for that soon. And in order to fundraise, I'm going to put those. I'm going to make those interviews available for people who want to donate to help support raising funds to make this book possible. And yeah, that's going to be my main objective, other than working for the National File. So follow me across social media if you want to contribute, if you want to offer your 2 cents about whether you be Gen X, Y, or Z. I would love to hear input. I would love to hear who you would like to be interviewed. And like I said, that's going to be kind of like bonus content. It's going to be these interviews. And that's going to be how people can help support the inevitable book. So if you can keep an eye out for that stuff, that would be great. Follow everybody at the National File. We work really hard to bring you good news, and we stay afloat with the help from people who follow our news. So support us however you can, even if that's just sending our links around. That does more than you can ever know. And excuse me, thank you so much for having me on and for dealing with my very tired early morning ranting and staying up so late to accommodate this interview.
You're all good, Kimberly. It was an absolute honor having you, and I just want to thank you for coming on. I just want to say to everybody, thank you for joining the Welsh Republic Podcast 101. Sorry for all the delays, everybody, but it's all good, Kimberly. It's all good. And I just want to say to everybody, please go and check out Kimberly's work and go check out her news outlet. She's the director, digital. Yeah, the National File. She does a fantastic job. They're a very, very good news company. They do great news, great articles, very good read. Also, make sure to follow, Kimberly on Twitter. And also, folks, remember to follow, the Welsh. Make sure you like and subscribe to this video. And also, remember, this is the Welsh Republic Podcast 2. My main channel was taken down. Please also remember to go like and subscribe to my Rumble. This video will be uploaded to Rumble. And also, the other video that I did with Yellow Sue will be uploaded to Rumble, within a day or so. But yeah, thank you for joining the Welsh Republic Podcast episode 101, everybody. Take care. God bless you all. Bye.